Watercolor is often introduced as an affordable medium, but many people discover that the cost of supplies can feel overwhelming, sometimes discouraging, before they've had a real chance to learn. I have seen many people step away entirely, not because they lacked interest or talent, but because material expenses felt out of reach. I don't believe cost should ever be the barrier to creation. That belief is the reason for this series, essential budget-conscious watercolor supplies that even pros use. Rather than sharing one long, overwhelming supply list, I'm breaking this topic into focused parts: paints, paper, palettes, and brushes. In this video, I'll focus only on paints, and more importantly, on how to think about choosing them. If you have ever stared at a wall of watercolor paints and thought, I have no idea what I actually need, this video is for you. Instead of throwing money at random sets, I'll walk you through 3, 6, 9 smart palette structures, small intentional groups of colors that let you mix clean colors, reliable neutrals, and expressive ranges. Once you understand this logic, you'll have a clear roadmap for your color choices while spending less. What to buy first, what to add next, and how to stop overbuying and start really learning to paint. Feel free to explore any brand within your budget, as long as colors support the essential palette structures we'll talk about today. Watercolor comes in many forms, but here I'll focus only on two most common, tubes and pens. I generally recommend tube paints, especially for learners who want to practice color mixing. They are fresher, easier to mix, and often economical if you paint regularly. Tube paint can be used like a pen set once dried in a palette. Pen paints, on the other hand, are compact and convenient, great for travel or casual sketching. However, they often offer limited mixing space, and the paint can take longer to activate. Also, some pen paints feel slightly binder heavy, which can affect flow. Neither type is right or wrong. What matters is how you work. Rather than starting with the brands, I prefer to start with the palette logic. These structures can be adapted to many brands and price points. With only 3 paints, 1 yellow, 1 red, and 1 blue, you can build a fully functional palette. This minimal palette strengthens mixing skills and helps you understand the color relationships quickly. Almost everything else can be mixed from these 3. Yes, you can mix secondary colors from primaries, but consider these. Having secondary colors makes it easier to create cleaner, more balanced neutrals. Adding these secondary colors often makes the painting process noticeably more efficient. Suggested additions are orange, green, and purple. If you want more flexibility, you can move to the essential 9, adding cool and warm versions of each primary. You'll achieve cleaner color transitions, more nuanced neutrals, and greater flexibility across subjects. Brand names vary, so choose the closest equivalents. Keep the same secondaries from the essential 6. Multiple versions of secondary colors are not necessary for this essential series. Many artists recommend sap green, and many sets include it as the only green. It's popular and absolutely useful. But if choosing only one green, I often prefer viridian. Sap green tends to lean warmer, which can make it harder to mix clean, neutral grays. Warmer greens are easier to mix. Cooler, deeper greens are harder to replicate convincingly if you don't already have one available. Beyond this point, palette choices become more personal. It depends on what you paint and what you reach for repeatedly. Even among essential palettes, artists happily disagree, and I am no exception. You may notice that I did not include several popular colors that appear in many small sets, such as yellow ochre, burnt sienna, and Payne's gray. These are wonderful and extremely useful, especially for landscapes and portraits. However, I simply see them as additions after your essential structure is in place. If I were to add just one more color beyond the essentials, it would be a deep, rich blue such as Prussian blue or similar dark blue to reach lower values efficiently. Color names vary widely between brands. The same color may have different names across brands, and the same name may look slightly different from one brand to another. When consistency matters, look at pigment numbers, not names. The code starts with P for pigment, followed by a letter indicating the color family. Y for yellow, R for red, B for blue, BR for brown, etc. And then a number for that specific pigment. For example, PB29 equals pigment blue 29, which is ultramarine blue in most brands. To support my belief, cost should never be the barrier to creating, I work with a two-tier approach. The first is the practice tier, affordable paints used freely for exercises and exploration. Here, the goal is freedom. You learn faster when you don't hesitate to use paint. The second is the study and archival tier, a smaller selection of paints meant for long-term learning and finished work. What's the difference? The main difference is pigment concentration and formulation. Artist-grade paints generally contain more pigment and fewer fillers. Colors are brighter, deeper, and more predictable as they dry. Student-grade paints often contain less pigment and more extenders or less saturated, which can make the colors look duller. For this series, my goal is to balance cost and quality, keeping recommendations under $50 whenever possible, without sacrificing the essential palette structures we discussed today. To do that, I set very strict limits for myself based on the essential color criteria outlined earlier. I excluded paint sets that didn't include at least 5 of the 6 essential colors, knowing that one missing tube or a small addition can always be added separately. This meant deliberately narrowing the field and leaving out many excellent, well-known brands and sets, not because they lack quality, but because including everything would dilute the educational focus of this project. The examples I show here are the ones that met my criteria at the time of filming: balanced color relationships, reliable pigment behavior, and reasonable cost for serious study. I stand by these choices, and in upcoming demonstrations, I'll explain more deeply why these colors work, especially when we begin mixing neutral grays and exploring complementary relationships. Because product availability and pricing change over time, I keep an updated list and links in the description where the information can stay current. In this tier, the goal is to remove fear and hesitation. These are paints you can use generously without worrying about the cost and perfect light fastness. You're primarily using them for mixing exercises, drills, and experimentation. I'm focusing the video on a smaller number of examples so the logic stays clear. I've included a few additional budget options in the description for those who want to explore further. Before moving fully into artist-grade paints, it's worth noting that some lines sit between student and artist grade in performance. These entry-level options can often be used for more than practice alone and may serve well for extended study. I would feel comfortable using some of these for serious work. For deeper study and finished work, artist-grade paints offer higher pigment concentration, more predictable mixing behavior, and stronger archival intent. Rather than recommending a wide range of brands, I've chosen to include only those that show clear, meaningful improvement over student-grade paints without unnecessary cost escalation. This series is not about finding the best materials. It's about building a watercolor practice that feels sustainable financially, creatively, and emotionally. Fewer tools chosen thoughtfully often lead to deeper learning than a crowded palette chosen out of pressure or fear.